This is the purchase contract. So this is obviously the document that you use to actually purchase the property. There's a bunch of addendums that are typically attached to the document, as well as quite a few other documents that have to be signed. But this is the actual contract that you use, that you enter into an agreement with the seller when you're purchasing a contract. So this first page, obviously very important. It kind of outlines responsibilities to you. This is a legally binding agreement and the things that you need to make sure that you're doing as you move through the purchase contract as you're signing it. So first thing, read the entire contract before you sign it. Obviously, you never want to sign anything without having read it. Read and review the seller property disclosure statement. You typically get this within the first couple of days of contract acceptance. Sometimes we can get it prior to or at contract time. It varies by agent. So if we have it, I always send it to my clients and have them review it. But sometimes you don't get this document actually until after we get under contract. That's when the seller starts to disclose any known issue that they have about the property. Review the inspection paragraph. So this is really important that you get a qualified home inspector to look at the overall home, the overall mechanics of the home. If there's anything glaring or things that are of concern to him or her, he will obviously put that in the report, bring it to your attention at the walkthrough, and then if necessary, we get an HVAC, mold, pest, pool. Typically the pest inspection and the termite inspection is done at time of general inspection. If we need to get a pool inspector or a roof inspector or anything else that is sort of causing attention or that's important to you, we will obviously schedule that during that 10-day inspection period. That is the most important time, and it's the first 10 days of contract acceptance. Make sure that you get, if you have a loan, they will require homeowners insurance. That's different than a home warranty. I will cover that at a different time. The home warranty, home insurance, two very separate things. Your lender will require homeowners insurance. If you're paying all cash, obviously you still need home insurance, but it's not necessarily required because there's no lien against the property at that time. But obviously, very much advise that you have homeowners insurance at any point in time when you own real estate. It says apply for your home loan now. I won't even show a property without having you pre-qualified with a lender. So we already have a pre-qualification letter in hand prior to showing a property, but obviously not every agent works that way. So this is something that if you don't have, then we wouldn't be writing the contract to begin with. Once we get under contract, then the title company will order a title commitment, send that over to you, make sure that you read it, and make sure that there's nothing in there that is of concern. Once we get the CC&Rs and rules and regulations from the HOA, obviously read those and make sure that you agree to the rules that the HOA has. Everybody has different rules. Everybody has different restrictions. So you really want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence on this to make sure that the community is somewhere that you want to live and that the rules and regulations that they have are in line with how you choose to live. And then obviously if you're buying a property in a non-HOA community, then this doesn't apply to you. And then obviously a few days prior to close of escrow, we will do a final walkthrough, ensure that any repairs that we've requested have been taken care of, and we're ready to go. So, if the property is unacceptable or something comes up, whether we're in inspection period or some other time, let me know as soon as possible. There are restrictions around when I can get you out of a contract with no harm or anything to you. So the sooner you can tell me of concerns or issues that you're having, then the better off we are. Also important, this is in the buyer advisory. I think I covered it in a previous video, but the wire fraud is a huge deal right now. There's ways to protect yourself. There's a document that you have to sign that outlines wire fraud and what the advisories are around that and how to protect yourself. But again, because it's such an issue, it's called out multiple times in multiple different documents that if you're wiring money to the title company, you're wiring your earnest money, your closing costs, funds to close, anything like that, there are ways to protect yourself to ensure that the money is actually going to the proper place and it doesn't end up in the hands of somebody trying to steal your money. All right, so we're going to go through this in pretty good detail. The first section is your name. So how do you want your name to appear on the title? This is obviously how I get other documents prior to writing a contract signed. So I should have already have this, but if you're putting the property in a trust or something like that, you want to let me know. The seller's name, basically how it's identified in the title or in the tax records, is what we would put here. Premises address, assessor's number. The assessor's number is mostly for the county recorder, for the title company, to ensure that the address and the actual piece of land that you're purchasing line up with each other. In addition to that, city, county, very basic stuff. Some of this stuff is more for the people that are handling the transfer of ownership of one property to another. There's multiple checks and balances in place to ensure that the property that you're purchasing and the property that's with the county recorder are the same property. And then there's what's called a legal description. Again, this is another check and balance for title company, for the county recorder's office, for both agents, to ensure that the property is conveying properly. All right, so line 10, the full purchase price. So what are you offering to purchase the home for? So the property could be listed for $400,000. You don't want to pay $400,000. The comps don't support $400,000. You want to come in at $390,000. So that's what we would put here. Earnest money, typically it's 1 to 2% of the total purchase price. That amount is typically applied towards closing costs and anything that essentially money due at closing. What your total down payment would go on line 10. So if you're a conventional loan with 10% down, you're purchasing for $390,000, then you would have $390,000 here. Maybe we do $4,000 just for an even number here in earnest money. And then your total down payment, if you're doing 10% down, would be $39,000. And then the total amount of the loan would be $390,000 minus the $39,000. That's how much you're actually financing. That would go right here. How you choose to do your earnest money, you could either do a personal check or wire transfer or some other way. Typically, most of my clients either do personal check or wire transfer. It goes to an escrow company. I never hold, and my broker never holds any earnest money in hand. So it would go directly to the escrow company. So that's the title company. They're the neutral third party that handles the transfer of ownership, make sure that everything gets handled with the county recorder's office. So you essentially have 3 different people handling the transaction. You have myself, the realtor. You have a lender who's handling how do you get the money to pay for the home. And then you have the title and escrow company, which handles the overall transfer of ownership, making sure that the property is properly transferred from the seller's name into your name, and that the county and the county recorder's office has it on record, the transfer of ownership. And then right here, you have close of escrow. So close of escrow would be the date that you actually want to take possession of the property. So we would put that date here. That would be the date that you get the keys. Important to remember that in the state of Arizona, we typically have you sign your paperwork 2 to 3 days prior to, ideally it's 3 days prior to close of escrow, mostly to give the lender and the title company time to make sure all of their documentation is in line. If there's anything missing, it gives them a day or two to figure it out before we actually close. I recommend closing on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I don't like closing on Monday, and I don't like closing on Friday, mostly because if something happens for a Friday closing, you are without a home for 2 days. Saturday and Sunday. So if you scheduled your movers to come on Friday and something happens and we're not able to close on time, and there's a million reasons why this happens. I do everything in my power to avoid missing close of escrow dates, but there are a million things that could happen that would cause us to be delayed. If we do it on a Friday, there's nothing I can do to make sure that you're in the home by the weekend. So I don't like to do anything unless it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. A lot of holidays fall on a Monday, so I don't like to do closings on Mondays either. Also, everybody's coming back from the weekend. It typically takes a little bit longer. We're not able to close until much later in the afternoon because lenders don't typically order the wire transfer until the morning of to fund your loan. So there's just a million reasons why it makes it a much more seamless, easy transaction if your close of escrow date is Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. So typically I write that in. We discuss that at time of, when we're writing the contract. Possession. So this would be when you would actually take possession of the property, which is at close of escrow typically. Sometimes sellers need to stay in the home for a couple of days or a little while after closing. If that's the issue, then we discuss that, and we discuss what we need to do to handle that and how we need to approach that. But typically possession is at close of escrow. So if we close on a Wednesday at 4 o'clock, I get a notice from the title company that we've recorded with the county recorder's office. Those are the magic words that everything is done. Then that's when you can take possession of the property. That's when I would release the keys to you, and you would be able to access the property as the new homeowner for that home. Addenda incorporated. So this is where there's multiple things. These are the common addenda that could be associated with the purchase of a home. So the additional clause actually has multiple things in there. I'll review that document at a separate time because it is pretty involved. The buyer contingency. So if you're a buyer and we're seeing these more and more often, and you're contingent on the sale of your current home, we would use this document. So there's two ways to do it. It's contingent on the sale of your home, meaning your home is not on the market yet, and we have to get it under contract, but you still want to try to move forward with the purchase of this home. We would make sure that we included this to protect you as best we can. Domestic water well. So if you're buying a property that has a water well on it and it's not connected to city water or anything like that, we would use this document. If the property's in an HOA, we would use this. Lead-based paint disclosure. If the property's built before 1978, we would use this document. Then loan assumption. So we're starting to see these a little bit more, where you want to assume the current loan that's on the property. So they're selling it for market value, but they have a really good rate, and you want to try to assume the loan. We would use that addenda. They're starting to become a little bit more common as the rates have gone up, but sellers have these very attractive loans that they're willing to let another buyer assume. On-site wastewater treatment. So that's a septic system. So if you have a septic system or you're purchasing a property with a septic system, we would use that. Seller financing. Sometimes we see this. It's not very common, but every now and then a seller is willing to finance rather than you go through a lender. Short sale. Again, this was very common, obviously, back when the market crashed. Property sellers were underwater on their homes. What they owed was significantly more than what the property was valued at. So we don't see them very often now, but we still see them from time to time. And then the solar addendum. This is one of those we're starting to see. This is actually pretty common. About half of my transactions in the last year or so have had solar panels on them. So it could either be leased or owned solar. Those two, that's all included in a property with solar panels. All right, moving on to the next page. This is what is this section 1G is what the seller is supposed to leave with the property. It outlines everything that's supposed to be left with the property if it's considered a fixture. Now, there's 3 items that are considered personal property that could stay with the property that lenders don't give us a hard time about. Refrigerator, washer, dryer. It's typically marked in the listing whether or not a seller is willing to leave these or not. If they are, we write the description. If you want them and they're not left in there, then obviously that's a conversation that I have with the listing agent, see if the seller is willing to leave them in with the right offer. We would check these boxes and we would try to get them for you if it's important to you. If there's an above ground hot tub that you want to ask the seller to leave, we can put that in there. Anything else, typically a lender does not like to see us write in any other personal property, but sometimes we can. It really depends on what the item is. A lot of times we just try to do it on a separate bill of sale and not have it included with the purchase of the home itself, just because it kind of complicates the loan a little bit more. I'm going to end here and we'll pick up in part 2 with the financing section.